All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today. We have representatives from both HP and Solutionz with us today. If you're wondering, this is not a sales presentation. Our focus is to educate and inform you on the latest trends in the evolving and emerging areas of artificial intelligence and audiovisual collaboration. We'll try to keep the acronyms to a minimum where we can. We're fortunate to work for companies who really value subject matter experts, and those are the people who you're going to hear from who are with us today. So I'm going to provide a brief introduction for each speaker, and then each speaker will introduce themselves in more detail. Of course, throughout our session today, feel free to put questions in the Q&A as you think of questions to ask. Please use the Q&A as they're both Q&A and chat tabs. The chat's more for any comments that you might have or emojis that you would want to share as well. So with that, I'm Scott Purdue. I manage HP's Eastern US collaboration business, and I'm your host for today's session. With us is Dan Gohl, Chief Technology and Strategy Officer for the US Education team at HP. David DeTrinidad, Vice President of Western US for Solutionz. Stephanie Penalt, who is the funding specialist for Solutionz. So we really tried to structure this so that we're able to kind of provide some of those trends, some of those updates, and then also provide options for funding sources that you may or may not be aware of to assist. So with that, I thank everyone for joining, and we'll turn things over to Dan Gohl.
Scott, thank you so much. If we could advance up to the intro slide. There we go. All right. So what we're here to talk about is really education. And while we talk about hybrid education, and we'll get into some definitions of how that occurs, what is absolutely critical is that as you hear from our Solutionz and HP presenters today, you think about how it fits within your learning environment. If you are in a higher ed institution and you are a community college, you're different than an R1 university. And both of those are different than our K-12 spaces. What is most important is that we prioritize the learning that students get by extending its breadth. That is where they can get assignments. And we've got some really interesting trends that are going on around dual enrollment in high school to dual enrollment in middle school, and accelerated learning in the elementary schools by having remote. We've also got presentation infrastructure. What are we doing with our boards and things like that? So as we talk through these today, a little bit about myself. I've been with HP for 2 years now, and I have the privilege of traveling around the country and talking to higher ed and K-12 systems about what it is they're trying to do for the learning outcomes. What are they doing with their learners, whether those be pre-kindergarten, middle school? The way we like to say at HP, we deal from pre-kindergarten to postgraduate studies in terms of innovating, architecting, and equipping spaces for you to engage those students where they're at to get them to where you need to go. I've been in the K-12 system as a teacher, a principal, and a central office administrator in higher ed, both at the faculty and administrative level. Done a little bit of research myself associated with higher ed universities, and then had the opportunity to deal with policy at the state level. My experience is at your disposal. And both HP and Solutionz have educational experts like me to continue the conversation that we're going to have today. So the takeaway here, use us. Next slide, please. So what we're going to focus on today across the entire ecosystem in which HP and Solutionz deal with is really this audiovisual piece. And that can be part of a unified communications platform, which is where progressive institutions are moving to where you have the ability to have not just course changes go on or bell schedule changes or announcements, but you have the ability to send emergency communication systems to let people call a code red or an emergency wherever they go. With the changing statutory limitations, this issue of communication from the endpoint device to the signage that goes on in an institution is really important, and that connects with the communication and collaboration infrastructure. And now we've got a new tool, a new infrastructure concern to worry about, which is how is artificial intelligence, both in terms of our ability to run artificial intelligence through natural language, through speaking, that we need to have the right microphones and the right noise cancellation, the right acoustic fencing to make that happen. But also what kind of machine learning is going on the back end to enable all of those technologies. That's all part of the spectrum of artificial intelligence. There's a lot of acronyms and features to learn. We've got to keep our literacy rates up. Next slide, please. So let's step back for a second and think about where education systems are as we are now in a new phase that began 2 years ago and is going to carry us through the foreseeable future. And that is, we are not what we were pre-pandemic, where people were advocating for the cautious and careful integration of technology, nor are we in the pandemic mindset, where technology was our sole lifeline to be able to maintain connections amongst faculty, between teachers and students, between students and each other. We're now in a post-pandemic place where technology is endemic because we have much more infrastructure capability, but we long for what the pandemic denied us, which is the ability to connect. And those districts that are thinking through, those higher ed institutions that are thinking through how we utilize technology to better connect, we get the best of both worlds. We have relationships being built, and we've got the ability to be remote when we need to be. And that extends the options for students to get better learning. Next slide, please. So we have this new normal, which has emerged out of the post-pandemic age, and it's happened at the same time that we've got ESSER funding, which has expired. And for the K-12 districts, you know what I mean, but we also know that their ESSER grants affected higher ed institution as well. There's a couple of big trends that are going on. One is enrollment, both at K-12 and for higher ed. Enrollment is a challenge. We are at a demographic peak. And what we're now needing to do is to make sure that we both attract and retain students as much as possible, because there's a flurry of new options to go out. And public school systems, higher ed institutions where students are choosing to attend, need to be able to ensure that once they have a student or they need to attract a student, being able to be and stay connected with them is absolutely paramount. But our educators are burnt out. Most of the devices that were purchased are now long in the tooth. They're 4 years old. And on October 14th of 2025, those districts that are Windows 10, that is no longer going to be supported by Microsoft. And so a Windows 11 transition is facing many of you as well. But notice that 77% want to be able to learn anywhere, anytime. And as I just left a cybersecurity conference in Washington, D.C. yesterday, I can tell you that higher ed and K-12 continue to be the primary targets for cybersecurity theft because they get lots of information with a single breach. We tend to have more centralized data access than other governmental institutions. That's what makes us so attractive. So we've got to keep cybersecurity on the line. Next slide, please. So how do we think? We need to change our conversations that we're having with our leadership groups. We can no longer turn to our deans, our provosts, our college presidents, our school boards, and our superintendents and say to them that we are just browser dependent and we can go with the lowest cost device and we don't need any of the peripherals. In fact, now people are finding more and more that higher ed and K-12 need to make sure that we can establish the ability for a student to be fully engaged with the immense processing power that they have at their fingertips. That means that the quality of the headphones, that means that the quality of the microphones on the devices, the ability to be integrated with a team, Zoom, or other environment absolutely is right at the top. So it is defining the learning experience and then having that drive us to device selection that must occur. We must create personas of what's it like for our special education students, those higher ed students who need various forms of accommodations. What's it like in an engineering or a career and technology lab is different than what it's like in an English language arts, social studies, math, or science classroom. Moving that discussion forward creates the model of the learner that drives the model of the device and the peripherals that we connect. It is context and situationally dependent. And we need to future-proof our technologies. For a while now, we've been worried about interoperability because so many of our applications run through a browser. But now, particularly with instructional materials for K-12 and higher ed, having embedded artificial intelligence features is going to slow down cloud-based only browsers. We are seeing more and more code being written to run on the endpoint device, and people need to think about what that's going to impact, particularly when it comes to how our audiovisual connects for multiple users simultaneously, with hoteling of staff, with students moving around. Focus on those personas, not on the particular speeds and feeds, as we like to say in business. Next slide, please. So let's look at where we're at. We are now ending the first quarter of the 21st century, and that certainly has been highlighted by rapid changes in learning technologies. Laptops, Wi-Fi, data analytics, and accountability systems have all now become heavily data dependent. The ability to detect devices and how they're used, the telemetry, as we like to say, of how a user is using their device really does matter. And that includes their audiovisual capability. How many of our students are on a Wi-Fi connection versus on a LTE connection versus in-network on our own secure networks or out of network on an open Wi-Fi channel? We can now gather all of that. And as we turn to the second quarter of the 21st century, what we're seeing is that our audiovisual capabilities need to be treated as if data was a utility. This is not a special feature, but just like water and electricity in our schools, so must our data flow be able to go and people be able to walk in and connect like a Lego brick, snapping into place when they're in their institutional role and then snapping out. Augmented reality, virtual reality, and extended reality are going to continue to seep in the coming years. And so what we need to do is make sure we're future-proofing our devices to run not just artificial intelligence, but also some of these extended high-intensity graphing processes. Fortunately, with the addition of graphic processing units as inboard and on endpoint devices, headsets, microphones, other features, we see the same processing capabilities being addressed by manufacturers, OERs, HP included, across the board. Gaming and simulation continue to be the primary activity which youth are engaged in, far more so than film, sports, and even other activities. We're looking at close to 2/3 of the incoming workforce having experience in gaming in some form as they move forward. That is all heavily audiovisually dependent. And the students we have today have the worst experience in audiovisual that they have ever experienced, and they're expecting better moving forward. It's this combination of interoperability with the ability to self-control. Next slide, please. So whenever we deploy technologies, be they for processing or audiovisual, we need to make sure we're looking at what the trends are moving forward. I've already mentioned one. I won't go into it right now because we're going to talk about artificial intelligence within our AV ecosystem in a few minutes. But we're seeing some trends where all families, institutions, and students are expecting individualized case management moving forward. This means the ability to call on a counselor or an artificial intelligent agent almost 24/7 to be able to connect, and to be able to connect either through a keyboard, a video, or an audio connect channel. And people are expecting to be able to record that history of how they've interacted, both for social, emotional, and academic turns, and store it as a learner education record where they have samples of their video and audio in addition to their text-based production as part of a lifelong resume moving forward. We've seen a lot of progress in this. This is moving to replace the transcript, and it is going to have multimedia elements that are stored for lifetime access moving forward. And with the advent of artificial intelligence dropping the effort needed, the work needed, the energy cost to get any particular piece of knowledge, we're seeing more and more institutions turn to students doing original research, particularly at the secondary and higher ed levels, where they're doing what we call hyper-localization, where they're going out and interviewing people in their community, where they're going out and creating multimedia portfolios of what goes on. They need the right equipment to be able to do that. These four trends are what is going to be affecting the next 3 to 5 years, which means that's the infrastructure we need to have in place today. Next slide, please. So let's dive into some of the use cases. We've got dual enrollment. I've mentioned accommodations, particularly for students who have some form of disability, our faculty members, our guest speakers needing to be able to get live translation and transcription in real time. We've also got a lot of use cases such as interpersonal communications, and this could be everything from a faculty member giving a lecture at another university remotely to an individual education planning meeting or IEP meeting for special education in the K-12 space. More and more counseling and specialized service such as speech-language pathology are proving to be too difficult to fill with real-time people. And so what's happening is that those services are being outsourced to remote providers. All of this requires the right AV infrastructure. World language instruction is moving more and more to where artificial intelligence is able to speak to each learner as they go on in order to give them personalized attention. We've always had our professional development. The expectation for public meetings to be able to be documented, recorded in a smooth way is putting pressure both on the software as well as the hardware that we put into small meeting rooms as well as large public gathering spaces. But I want to come back to dual enrollment for a minute. Just in the last month, we've had a report released where more than 20% of high school students are enrolled in some form of dual enrollment course, typically at a community college in the area. And that is populating approximately a quarter of the population for community colleges around the country. This is an extraordinary change, and there's issues of equity around access for it. But what it's saying is that more and more students are getting started on their post-secondary credentials, and this is requiring remote hybrid education. It's not just what goes on in the whiteboard space, it's what goes on between spaces and institutions. Next slide, please. So in order to make all this happen, what HP is doing, and we certainly know that other manufacturers are doing it as well, is we are really focusing on the construction and the quality of the endpoint device. That is your laptops, desktops, workstations, and servers, and the peripherals attached to them. Microphones and speakers being able to make sure that audio quality is high sample in order to produce replication down the line, as well as having cameras that are smart enough to actually realize who's speaking when, highlight them, and then have the ability to either give a central person control or each end user control in the manner in which they are interacting with the icons and people that they're seeing. We are now applying artificial intelligence to be able to do this, to look at the way in which we are reducing power consumption on a device for this to make happen. Paying attention to power consumption, make sure that you are lengthening the battery life, which is meaning fewer recharges and extending it forward. Every manufacturer is doing this in a different way. Make sure that you are asking questions about how are computer vision, machine learning, and natural language processing enabling artificial intelligence to offload the need for command and control from human beings so that they have an easier time getting a better quality product. It's about increasing resolution with decreasing power consumption and being able to do it with human interaction, both natural language as well as gestures and haptic controls. Next slide, please. And it's not just education. One of the privileges of my job is I get to talk to so many of our local government, and we're seeing a lot of applications of AV interfaces through chatbots as people go and seek permits, regulatory applications. We're here to talk about education, but in healthcare and in public safety as well, we're seeing more and more devices, everything from an emergency tag that somebody wears around their neck to the hallway monitors, the cafeteria, being able to have monitoring through the built-in cameras that are there and putting artificial intelligence on it in order to proactively make sure that there's nothing amiss, that no one gets lost, that we're able to take a student who flees school and track down where they've been. But look for how that is done with trust, accountability, transparency, and sustainability. We need to make sure that the devices we are making are able to be recycled in order to reduce the overall environmental impact. It decreases the long-term prices and gives us better products. Next slide, please. This means going beyond what so many of you who are CIOs or work in CTO, CIO offices out there have been before. All of our applications, from our learning management systems to our student information systems, our HR systems, now have some form of audiovisual component. We've spent a long time making sure that the data sets behind these are working interoperable. Now we need to make sure that the ways in which the operating systems on our devices, the operating systems on our AV equipment, and the way in which the APIs for our applications work flow smoothly together. This is a long-term inventory control problem to make sure that you're not having some setting on one app shut down your whole AV moving forward. We're prepared to help talk you through that. Anyone who knows their business should be able to do the same. Next slide, please. So this is a very dense slide. I'm not going to go into it right here, but for because you've signed up for this Solutionz opportunity, there's a lot of opportunities for artificial intelligence within education specifically. And myself and other experts from Solutionz and HP are able to really help you think through how do we enable equity and accessibility to artificial intelligence benefits, both generative AI, which are your chatbots, your tutoring, your ability to get students to express themselves and help them be able to produce higher quality products with better cognitive outcomes, but also the ways in which machine learning is running on your operational side. And that has a lot of resources that are able to do it. You should be able to monitor all of your devices and do predictive analytics about failures, stress points, and bottlenecks being able to move forward. It's an extraordinary time to be able to manage large fleets of devices by having an assistant who's one of those devices. Next slide, please. So what we are doing with HP is what many others are doing. I'm just going to highlight it as best practices. We currently have, and this does include an audiovisual component, a Teacher AI Academy. We're partnering with Yale on the higher ed side. And for both of you, we're giving away a tool called AI Studio, which will let you begin to treat your audiovisual devices as a feed to the artificial intelligence that you can run locally. This does not involve expensive cloud expenses. This is the ability to gather all the meetings, all the classes that are being recorded, and make sure that you have the ability to analyze what is the engagement, what is the impact, how do you move things forward. In order to do that, you need a central hub, and HP is distributing that. Others have products as well. But you've got to realize that AV is just not a real-time service. It is now part of the Internet of Things that produce artifacts that become fodder for our artificial intelligence to do. And if you're in higher ed, certainly look for us at EduCause last week in San Antonio and coming up in the future. Next slide, please. So again, we're going with this educate, demonstrate, activate, and I've just put these on there. We have an ongoing conversation on LinkedIn. Please reach out to Solutionz, reach out to HP in order to join these. Know that there is a community to help you fix your problem, both your peers and content experts moving forward. Next slide, please. Wherever you are going, look for trust and credibility. We have chosen to tie our expertise to educators at Digital Promise. They are an extraordinary organization. They have a deep commitment to audiovisual equity, particularly around accommodations, but also around cultural impact and the ways in which audiovisual tools are used. It is really important, going back to that beginning statement that I made, that you be knowledgeable on what your community's norms are in terms of the broadcast, production, broadcast, and recording of audiovisual artifacts. Trust and credibility are what you cannot compromise as you build out an ecosystem that is much more vision-oriented, recording of audio that's going on, and is able to build for the future. Next slide, please. I'm going back to this phrase I used at the very beginning, which is that our job, the job of any companies that you want to look at using, is to help you innovate first. We want to sit, they need to sit and think with you about how you go out and do things. And then we architect solutions for that. You need to make sure that you're dealing with all the personas, your workers, your students, your teachers, your administrators, and then your GIS staff, your Office of Accountability staff. For R1 universities, your researchers. You need a very different kind of machine. You need a very different kind of processing capability that then all of which ties into the collaboration technology. How are you going to ensure that no matter where someone is in your institution, they're able to collaborate with a colleague or a peer remotely? That is what we want to make high end for everyone at a reasonable price. Next slide, please. We want to make sure you do it securely. We want to make sure you do it with comfort, and you want to make sure you do it with high-end quality. That's why HP and Poly have come together to begin working with folks, but others have their own solutions. You've got to not trust but verify that people deliver on their promises and treat it as a whole learning experience. I think that we're one more slide and we are off to go. What I'm going to end with is this. AV capability is extending the relationship across space and time. Have the infrastructure able to make sure that happens. So where do we go to enhance this learning environment?
David, you're up.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Dan. And thank you, everybody, for spending a few minutes with us today. My name is David DeTrinidad. I'm the Vice President of Sales for Solutionz West. I started with Solutionz back in 2006. And I've been in the industry since 1996. So I guess you could say I've been around the block a couple times at least. I've been asked to say a few things with regards to the role of AV in integration and the role of the AV integrator in education. Today, more than ever, AV plays a huge role in education. Every form of education is turning to AV to enhance their learning environments, including higher ed, K through 12, trade schools, and the like. Next slide, please. So what exactly is AV integration? The standard definition is the seamless blending of audio, video, and control systems to create effective learning environments. Now, due to COVID, AV in education is more important today than it ever has been. In fact, COVID really helped to expose how not ready many of us were in the education area, organizations, really pre-pandemic. Many were caught flat-footed and found themselves scrambling to try to deploy AV systems so they can continue to educate. Today, AV helps education by facilitating modern teaching methods and helps to support diverse learning styles. Not to mention today's youth also almost expect to have AV, some sort of AV in their learning environment. Next page, please. AV, like anything else in our world, is always evolving and will continue to do so as technology continues to advance and improve. Some of the current trends that we are seeing with AV in education would be hybrid learning environments, integrating remote participants, remote instructors into the learning environment, interactive classrooms, enhancing overall learning experiences in the classroom by fostering more student engagement and participation. Immersive technologies are becoming more prevalent like incorporating state-of-the-art virtual reality, VR, and or augmented reality, AR, applications in education. So what is AR, right? That's kind of a newer term. Augmented reality simply superimposes sounds, videos, and graphics onto an existing environment. It uses four main components to make all this happen, which would be cameras, sensors, processing, and projection. Next page, please. AV can be scary and intimidating, right, to the average user, but it really does not need to be, especially day 2 and beyond. You're going to hear this term, day 2 and beyond, quite a bit here. Audio systems. So some of the key components, audio systems. Probably the most important component when you're talking about distance learning and whatnot. You can conduct a call still with if you don't have video, but if you don't have audio, you're done, right? So making sure you have quality components, quality equipment, like microphones, speakers, sound management, making sure you have quality equipment when it comes to the video systems, the projectors, the screens, the cameras, high definition for video presentations and lectures, control systems. You know, when I think about control systems, it always reminds me of the Wizard of Oz, and you know, the wizard behind the curtain, right, making everything happen. But on the other side of the curtain, everything's seamless, and that's really what our goal is. It's to ensure that the technology that's behind the curtain works and it works flawlessly, and that you have that support day 2 and beyond when deploying this equipment. Next slide, please. So like anything, like any other thing in life, AV also has its challenges. So what are some of these challenges that AV can pose? Budget constraints, right? How do we fund these projects? Or you may have budget, but not enough budget. So how do I get the most for the budget I have, right? Again, day 2 and beyond, super important, supporting the system. And that's what we mean by day 2. After the installation, what happens then, right? And to be quite honest with you, many resellers can sell the exact same equipment, right? We work with the same manufacturers, but not every AV integrator has the right plan or team in place to support your project the day after the install, or what we call day 2 and beyond. Training the user base. There's nothing worse than investing in AV, having it sit in the corner and collect dust. This happens quite often, unfortunately. It's to everybody's benefit, the customer's benefit, the AV integrator's benefit alike, to ensure that the AV equipment deployed gets used regularly for its intended and non-intended purpose. Pardon me. So what do I mean by non-intended purposes? So I just want to kind of drop this here and let you kind of think about this a little bit. What if, as your AV integrator, we could essentially help accomplish 2 tasks with 1 funding source, right? So in other words, we assist with a grant application of sorts, and you'll learn more about grants with the next speaker. But For instance, one in particular, the Rust DLT, states that 51% of the time, the equipment has to be used for its stated purpose. Well, how about the rest of the time? How about the other 49% of the time? I think as an AV integrator, part of our job is to really help flush out some of these things for you and to have these conversations. Are you interested in doing something like esports, something of that nature, right? But how do we fund that if we're funding this? Well, again, by really working collaboratively with your AV integrator, the way we install the equipment, we can put it on carts instead of wall mounting that can be rolled out into another environment, things of that nature. Now you're really maximizing the funding that you're looking for to accomplish many different purposes. Back to training and staff, faculty and staff, Solutionz has a department called ADTS, Adoption and Digital Training Services, where we work on curriculum. We help educate the people that are using this equipment so they can use it to its fullest potential. Also super important, scalability. It's important that the equipment you purchase and deploy will grow along with your project needs, right? Don't find yourself stuck with equipment that's going to end of life, end of service, after you deploy it, shortly after you deploy it. Make sure that you are working with an AV integrator that can really kind of help future-proof the equipment you're looking to deploy. Next slide, please. So here's a quick little slide of a university that we assisted here at Solutionz, Southern University A&M College. The client came to us in 2020. We worked with the dean of the college, the CTO, to provide grant guidance and budget for distance learning projects in 2020 and again in 2022. The project brought distance learning to rural, underserved communities, financially challenged communities in the Louisiana area. Infrastructure was built out into libraries, schools, mayoral offices, and community centers. Solutionz then worked with HP Polycom at the time on the design of all the rooms, right? And then the hubs were outfitted with dual screen media line systems, while the end user sites consisted of EduCards. The HP Poly devices were paired with Zoom rooms, right? So we were able to use the Zoom technology. And then Solutionz provided all the equipment, all the installation services, integrated services, grant guidance on the front end and on the back end for 30 total sites. So hugely successful program there. Next slide, please. So best practices. Whoever you choose as your AV integration team, there are a couple best practices that every integrator should and must adopt. Make sure that you and your AV integrator do a complete needs assessment. Make sure you gain and gather input from stakeholders, faculty, students alike, the people using the technology. It's critical that your equipment is completely upgradable, expandable, and scalable. Again, future-proof your investment. Ensuring you have a plan in place to train and support your user base is critical for the overall success of your project. Don't let your equipment sit there and collect dust. Next slide, please. So the relationship between the customer and the AV integrator is an important one. As your AV integrator, our role should include working with and coordinating with your IT and facilities departments to ensure a seamless integration with your existing environments. As your AV integrator, it's crucial that we tailor our customized solutions with your specific needs. Again, many AV integrators offer similar products. The part that can really make or break your project is the strength of the maintenance and support plans and services beginning day 2 and beyond. We understand oftentimes teachers, staff, and students can speak different languages, both literally and metaphorically, and have different needs. As an AV integrator, we help pull all these differences together to ensure cohesiveness in your classrooms and in your education environments. Next slide. In closing, it's an extremely exciting time in the AV industry. With the introduction of AI and machine learning and the potential to truly personalize learning experiences, the benefits of AV technology today and into the future cannot be understated. That and the efficiency of AV solutions today is what helps make this technology a complete complement and enhancement to any learning environment. So with that, want to thank you for your time and your attention today. And now I'd like to hand this off to Stephanie Pedalt, who's our National Grants Program Manager here at Solutionz. Stephanie.
Thank you, David. Hello, everybody. And as David said, my name is Stephanie Penalt. I'm the National Grant Program Manager here at Solutionz. And I've been with Solutionz since 2016, early 2016, and in early 2017, I stepped into the role of National Grant Program Manager. So for me, it's a really fantastic fit because I get to help so many organizations kind of go after funding that they need to purchase technology for, whether that's for healthcare or school districts or higher education. So for me, it's a really wonderful fit and a great opportunity to get to kind of meet people across our country, help them address the needs that they have for technology and find adequate and appropriate sources of funding that can provide for them dollars to purchase technology. So I'm going to highlight 4 separate funding opportunities today. First slide, please. Thank you. Today we're going to talk about first the USDA's Rural Utility Services Distance Learning and Telemedicine Grant, which we affectionately refer to as the RUS-DLT, or sometimes even shorter, just the RUS grant. This grant has come out every single year since 1994, and it is a specific capital grant. So it is solely to purchase either distance learning or telemedicine or a combination of both of those types of equipment. So the program overview, this grant looks to provide funding for technology that connects remote areas. It encourages improving telemedicine and distance learning services for rural residents. So the great thing about this grant is pretty much anybody can apply. It's for state and local organizations, school districts, public and private colleges and universities, for-profits, nonprofits, federally recognized tribes, and healthcare organizations. As I said, this grant has come out every year since 1994. This year, we are hearing from the USDA that it could potentially open in December or January. So the expected deadline to apply for this grant would be maybe April of 2025. And this grant provides up to $1 million of funding for each application. This grant does have a match requirement of 15%, but if you think about your technology spend, it's like having an 85% off coupon for all of your funding dollars or technology dollars that you may need to spend. So this grant, like I said, it's wonderful. It comes out year after year. It is intended to target rural populations, thinking about areas that have populations of 20,000 or less. And it will fund everything from K-12 and higher learning, anything that has to do with distance learning, career pathing, workforce development, connecting healthcare sites, maybe in more urban locations, to very rural clinics that don't have the benefit of having specialty clinicians. They're able to connect in real time, real world assessments. So that's the first grant that we talked about. Next slide, please. Okay, this one is the COPS, School Violence Prevention Program, or the SVPP. Again, this one has been coming out every year. This program looks to target schools to provide funding to improve security at schools and on school grounds. It is open to school districts, including public charter schools and school districts with a single school location, states, units of local government, tribes, and school boards, local law enforcement, and then LEAs, local education associations, are all perfectly eligible applicants for this grant. It is expected to open in April and with an anticipated deadline of June 2025. So the projects that this would fund would be things like cameras, metal detectors, lighting, and other deterrent measures. Also training for local law enforcement officers and technology that will coordinate with local law enforcement and the school locations to ensure student safety. Last year, there was a total of $73 million in funding available, and there is a three-year grant, and there is a 25% match required. So for this one, think about a 75% off coupon for your technology spend. Next slide, please. This one is similar, and it is called the STOP School Violence Prevention Program. This is a grant that's put out by the Department of Justice. It has a couple different categories for eligibility. So category 1 would be state governments and public and state-controlled institutes of higher education. Category 2 would be cities and townships, federally recognized tribes, nonprofits with or without a 501c3, institutes or other than institutes of higher education, and independent school districts and private institutes of higher education. So it looks at increasing school safety by implementing solutions that will improve the school safety climate. So solutions could include school-based behavioral health threat assessments or intervention teams to identify school violence risk among students. There are technological innovations that are shown to increase school safety, such as anonymous reporting technology and other school safety strategies that assist in preventing violence. Again, this grant kind of runs at the same time that the other school violence grant does. They will both open at the same time in either April or May. So you're looking at another expected deadline of June. They usually are due within 2 days of each other. This one has, like I said, the 2 different categories. There'll be 10, maybe 10 or 12 anticipated awards for category 1 and up to 69 for category 2. So the limit on this one, or the ceiling for funding, is up to $2 million per award for category 1 and up to $1 million for category 2. Next slide, please. Okay, this one is for school-based mental health. This grant program is anticipated to open hopefully in January or February, and LEAs or SEAs and a consortia of both can apply. The estimated total grant funding for this is about, for last year was 19 million, so you can kind of expect that same pool for this year. It does have a fewer number of awards, 15 maybe to 25, and this one has a match requirement of 25% minimum. The award range is anywhere from $500,000 to $3 million. And I noticed that I didn't say for the Rusty LT grant, the anticipated number of awards or anticipated award pool total funding. Last year was 73 million. We expect it to be kind of the same for the Rusty LT this year. And it usually has in excess of 100 awards, 100 and change. That it varies, but that's a pretty good target for that grant. Back to the school-based mental health. This program, the purpose of this is to increase the number of credentialed school-based mental health professionals and also to get online tools for wellness and mental health support and access to students. I do realize that this is a lot of information that I've given you to digest, but the good news is that Solutionz has grant program services team that is here to help you. Whenever you decide to pursue a grant or a different kind of funding source, when you're looking at needing some more technology for your organization. We offer our support services completely free of charge, and we have helped many organizations across the country successfully apply for and win just under $50 million in technology grants. So we have a great track record, we have a solid team, and we would love the opportunity to be able to help you kind of identify and then pursue a grant application. Thank you.
All right, Stephanie, thanks so much. So
Thank you.
just a reminder for anyone who does have a question, feel free to put that in the Q&A. For anyone who is on audio and may not be able to see the questions, we did have a question come in if we will provide a recording of the session. And yes, we will be providing later this week a recording as well as the slides that have been presented to everyone that has joined the call today. So if we do get some additional questions, we'll certainly direct that and everyone will stay on here for a moment. But I would just like to recap. So I want to thank Dan for presenting on the educational climate and the evolution of AI and the importance of audiovisual integration. David for really highlighting how AV is being integrated more into our educational workflow, right? It used to be a standalone, hey, there's a system in this room or something over there. Now it's very tied together and it's part of that overall education strategy and plan. And then certainly Stephanie for really pulling together the funding sources and opportunities. So we love our jobs. We love serving this area and working within the education market. So we're here to help, and please reach out if there's anything we can do as a follow-up to this session. So I'll pause with that. I don't see any additional questions, but I'll open it up to any of the team members we have for final comments.
So Scott, I really wanted to build off what David and Stephanie fit together so well on building off the general context I provided. Stephanie's talking about funding mechanisms to make things happen. David talked about multiple uses and extension, right? Whether it's e-gaming, which is in a classroom, which during the day might be an architecture classroom or something else. What you can do is use the money that Stephanie's making available for all these multiple purposes. This is not a one-to-one match. The grant is offered off the primary use. That does not exclude or preclude the use of these spaces, of these tools, of these technologies for all the learners in your place. So find the entry point in the grant application that fits you. It might be social emotional learning. It might be that we're actually doing a lot around our students' mental health, where we're bringing in the ability for them to talk with experts. But then that space is also being used for instructional, but maybe it's the reverse. Then you've got the e-gaming and the other places. Think big, be bold, and we can give some extraordinary experiences to our learners.
Yeah, it's a great point. And one thing when we're talking with folks about grants is it always is, your environment better than we do, right? So you kind of dream big and build that case, and then we're here to help support that and put the pieces together. Well said. All right. Well, again, thank you to everyone who has participated today. We will certainly follow up with a recording. We appreciate your attention, and everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.